Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar on virtual one-on-one client support, learnings from the pandemic year, hosted by Prosper Canada on behalf of the ABLE Steering Committee. We will begin just now, and if you need to connect via telephone, there are some audio numbers there for you to use. You are currently all muted as attendees so that we can preserve audio quality. But please, if you have any questions, please use the question box at the left side of your screen, and you can type in technical questions or any questions for presenters as our session continues. So welcome everyone. Again, some logistical information if you are new to our webinars. Again, we have everyone on mute outside of our presenters to conserve bandwidth, and we will also be joining you via audio only. We recognize internet bandwidth is a tight commodity often these days with all of us working and learning and socializing from home. Also in the control panel at the side of your screen, you can find a few handouts. These include a copy of the slides that we'll be sharing with you today, so you can download those at any time and refer to them later or share with your colleagues if you'd like to share out what you've learned today. We also have a few tip sheets and handouts from our Prosper Canada financial coaching toolkits, which are relevant to the topics that our presenters will be discussing. So again, please feel free to download any of those handouts at any time and review now or later. We'll also be sharing a recording of this session later on, so if you would like to share with any of your colleagues, you'll have access to that within a few days. Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge that we here at Prosper Canada are joining you from Toronto, which is situated upon traditional territories. These territories include the Wendat Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nations, and the Métis Nation. Toronto is in the Dish with One Spoon territory. The Dish with One Spoon is a treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and Haudenosaunee that bound them to share the territory and protect the land. Subsequent Indigenous nations and peoples, Europeans, and all newcomers have been invited into this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. Today, the meeting place of Toronto is still the home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work in this community on this territory. We acknowledge and thank everyone joining us on the line from traditional territories across Turtle Island. We're very honored to be having this meeting with you, and we thank you for taking the valuable time out of your day to join us. As we mentioned, ABLE and Prosper Canada are pleased to be bringing this session to you today. ABLE is a cross-sector community of practice working in Canada to reduce poverty through financial empowerment. And Prosper Canada is a national charity dedicated to expanding economic opportunity for Canadians living in poverty through program and policy innovation. The ABLE virtual series, Recover and Rebuild, helping Canadians build financial security during the pandemic and beyond, is brought to you today. This is part of our spring series, which is oriented towards practitioners and more interactive events. And we will be bringing a more expanded fall series to you later in October and November, designed for all financial empowerment stakeholders. So we hope you'll stay tuned with us, not just this month, but coming later this fall when more events are happening. Our series is made possible through the generous support of our sponsors, which you'll see there on the screen: TD Bank Group, Intuit Financial Freedom Foundation, Assiniboine Credit Union, Haventree Bank, the Canadian Bankers Association, PayPal, Duca Impact Lab, and the Financial and Consumer Services Commission of New Brunswick. Today's session is all about one-on-one client support during the COVID-19 pandemic, including financial coaching programs and other services that develop rapid triage to connect clients with the services and support they need, and everything in between. We have three great speakers who I'll introduce in more detail in a moment. But we want to emphasize that everyone listening on the line is also bringing their own experiences to this topic, and we hope you'll share questions with us as our panel goes on. The last year has certainly been a challenging time in a host of ways, but it's also brought a lot of learning and a lot of adaptation in the way we work and the way we support the continuing needs of our community members. So our speakers today will share insights from delivering their programs in the last year, things like adapting to different technology use, responding to changing needs of clients, navigating a new work from home environment, and so forth. So again, we'll have time for Q&A at the end, so please share your questions as we go through our panel. And we're pleased to welcome all of our great speakers today. Elise Nussbaum is a financial coach with Neighbourhood Financial Trust Partners in New York City, and she is working on attaining her CFP certification. She's written about personal finance for The Billfold, 2 Cents, and Her Money, and her contact and photo are there on the screen. Welcome, Elise. We're very glad to have you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Suzanne Walker. Suzanne is a financial coach and facilitator with Carya in Calgary. She brings her passion, enthusiasm, and expertise to her role with her participants. Before joining Karia last year, Suzanne spent 20 years in the banking world as both a corporate and retail banking officer, and volunteering in the areas of community development led her to the role that she is in now. Outside of work, she loves to garden, bake, and listen to a good book or podcast. So welcome, Suzanne. We're glad you're with us today.
Thank you so much.
And third, Millie Acuna is with us from SEED Winnipeg, where she's been since February 2015. She joined SEED with 15 years of experience working in the credit union system, including management, training, and project management. She's very passionate about serving those who are unbanked or underbanked, strengthening relationships with the community, and supporting financial empowerment for all. So welcome, Millie. We're so glad to have you today.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
And finally, my name is Glenna Harris. I'm Manager of Learning and Training here at Prosper Canada. I've been at Prosper Canada also since 2015, and before that had various roles in the academic and not-for-profit sectors, and this has been a wonderful field to be a part of. So now that we know a little bit about our speakers here today, we'd love to hear from you. We are talking today about supporting clients one-on-one during the pandemic, and our panelists will give some examples of what they've learned and done. But we'd love to know your experiences as well. Have you been supporting clients over the phone, over video, in person in various ways, or in some other way that you'd like to share more detail on in the question box? And you can click as many of the options here that apply to your circumstance. So I'll leave this open for a few more seconds. Regrettably, we do not have any Jeopardy music or any other sound to fill the time as we fill this poll. I see a few more responses still coming in. All right, I'll close it in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So it looks like an overwhelming number of you have been helping clients over the phone. So that's wonderful to hear that sometimes the long-standing technologies are still the very useful ones, followed very closely by folks using video conference. And then almost half of you have been using in-person meetings. So if you have any other comments to add there, we'd love to hear in the question box. And looks like from the answers in the question box as well, some of you have been using email to support. So thank you for sharing those. And then last but not least, we'd love to hear from you about what types of money conversations you've been supporting over the last year and a bit during these pandemic times. Certainly, there are many types of conversations out there, but if you were to pick one, what would you say has been the priority over the last year working with your clients? So again, I'll leave this up for a few seconds. Answers are still coming in. All right, I'll close this in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And thank you for that. Suzanne, Millie, and Elise, it looks like we've got a variety of types of money help happening amongst our listeners. Accessing benefits, tax filing, and money management concerns are all very well represented, but it's great to see that debt repair and saving have also been in the conversation. So thank you everyone. And if you would like to share anything that you've learned this past year that you'll keep applying to your work going forward, again, please let us know in the question box, and we'll share out some of those answers as we go through our presentations today. Yeah, so that is enough from me, I think, for the moment. And I'd like to turn the presentation over to our first speaker, Elise Nussbaum, who's going to tell us about her work with coaching clients with Trust Plus over the last year. So Elise, I'm happy to turn the presentation over to you.
Great, thank you so much, Glenna. Before we begin, I just want to give everyone a heads up that, as Glenna mentioned, we are located in New York City and we serve people living in the United States. So some of the specifics that I talk about here in terms of resources might not be immediately familiar to you, but you get the idea. So I'd like to start by giving everyone here some background on who we are and what we do. Trust Plus is a social enterprise. It's a financial coaching service offered by Neighbourhood Trust Financial Partners, which is a financial empowerment nonprofit based out of New York City, but we talk to people across the United States. And our mission is to help people take control of their finances, weather financial storms, and work towards their long-term goals. So we start with that human connection of a sustained relationship with a coach. That's the trust part of our name. And we also include a suite of digital tools that supplement that service. So that is the plus. We offer one-on-one coaching via phone, video conference, text, email, and our focus is providing support and expert guidance to help our clients manage their personal finances in a way that works best for them. This is not one size fits all personal finance advice.
It rarely is it?
Yeah. In practice, you know, you go to the self-help section of a bookstore, you get your fill of one size fits all, but boots on the ground, it does not look that way.
Exactly. Yeah.
The Trust Plus service is offered at no cost to our clients. And I think it's important to stress that their information remains 100% confidential. We don't share it with their employers, we don't share it with their referring organizations, and we don't sell any data to third parties. Can we move on to the next slide? Thank you. So in our first session, you know, the client is connected with Trust Plus and makes that connection with the coach. In our first session, we begin by offering the client their choice of 3 different paths. So we have the credit and debt path, the budgeting and money management path, and the savings and long-term goals path. So it's the choice of the client that determines the trajectory of that first session. And of course, if there's something else on their mind, like if they have a specific question about, I don't know, benefits or taxes, or they have a financial emergency, of course, we start there. The sessions generally last about half an hour. And we do schedule the next appointment at the end of the conversation just to keep that momentum going. You know, I like to say it's a marathon, not a sprint. And we also have these digital tools that include automated text to remind the client of the action steps that we had decided on together, as well as a web-based application that allows clients to review the credit report that we had pulled in session and the associated credit score. They can schedule appointments there. They can review the action steps we talked about. And we call those action steps take action todays. And then, of course, you know, between sessions, they can always reach out via text, they can reach out via email, and we respond to them as soon as we get that. So here you can see the demographic chart of our clients. As you can see, our client base is largely Black and Latinx, as well as a small percentage of Asian American and Pacific Islanders in there. Our clientele is also about 70% women. And the median income is generally about $20,000 to $30,000 a year, with most clients in their 30s and 40s. As you can also see, a majority have quote unquote subprime credit scores, with median collections hovering around $1,000. As you may have surmised from the fact that we serve people across the country, this work has always been remote. And so our transition to working from home was more or less seamless in terms of service delivery. But the pandemic itself upended American life in ways that we hadn't thought were possible, for better and for worse. And so we had to adapt. Long-term goals, debt repayment, and anything that lay more than a couple of months into the future had to be shelved. We were helping our clients get through each week, 1 week at a time. And that, you know, even that was a triumph at times. The very beginning of the pandemic was a disaster. Rideshare drivers and restaurant workers saw their income disappear overnight, and other workers weren't far behind. Our clients were dealing with totally unprepared unemployment offices who were trying to handle millions of people crashing their websites and flooding their phone lines looking for help. And when this happened, I often recommended that my clients contact their elected representatives at every level. I was like city, state, members of Congress, and that's for two reasons. One is that at times, you know, your elected representative might be able to, you know, their office might be able to actually help you access those benefits. And I did see that in some cases, but I also felt that our representatives need to hear from us. They need to hear what we need in order to make the changes, like hiring more people at these unemployment offices that make a difference to so many people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, people couldn't pay their credit cards, they couldn't pay their mortgages, they couldn't pay their car notes. And we actually saw something extraordinary, which is that these creditors actually became much more flexible in those early months of the pandemic, allowing people to skip months of minimum payments, or maybe they would tack 6 months onto the end of a mortgage in order to extend that grace now. And that was something that we absolutely shared with all our clients, and we encouraged them to request that grace and that flexibility from their creditors. And then at a certain point, we saw things start to change, particularly in America with the CARES Act, which was the economic stimulus bill signed into law on March 27th, 2020. You still had all of these people who are still undergoing the trauma of job loss on top of this public health catastrophe. But the response, and I'm thinking particularly here of the federal enhancement of unemployment benefits, which at that point was adding $600 a week to the state benefits, as well as suspending all required payments and interest on federal student loans. That was a literal lifeline. And I'd love to get into the macroeconomic implications of a 330 million person country suddenly developing an interest in a social safety net, but we don't have multiple hours or any wine to hand, so I'll just let you sit with that on your own time.
Well, when we return to in-person conferences, Elise, I'm sure we will all be happy to have that conversation.
Oh yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
So the one thing that everyone agreed on was that people needed money. And we were proud to be able to partner with philanthropic donors whose priority was cash relief last summer. So they had the money, but they needed a fast way to identify who needed it the most. And using the data that we had gathered, we were able to reach out to our clients who were most in need and let them know that cash relief grants of $500 to $1,000 were available. And that was, I have to say, just personally, that was a great day when I could do that. And just on a side note, many of our clients thought it was a scam at first. They're like, who are
Oh
these
gosh.
people offering me money in my text messages? And they would only respond after they had talked to their financial coaches about it. And that's just one more example of the importance of those personal relationships. We also spent a lot of time interpreting the CARES Act and what it could mean for our clients. So there were suddenly different requirements for receiving unemployment benefits, and that meant that some of our clients were unaware that they were now eligible for unemployment when they weren't before. And the same goes for expanded eligibility for food assistance. The burden of federal student loans being lifted also opened up other options for how our clients might use their money. Some clients were like, oh, well, I'll keep paying it. And we didn't take that as a given. We thought about, okay, well, would it maybe be better to put that money aside, shift that priority to having cash on hand, just in case something happens. And we also shifted our focus from the working poor to anyone who might be in need of financial coaching. And we bypassed the usual channels through which people get linked with our services. That meant that we connected with a lot more people who were in acute financial crisis. And we honed our skills in finding local resources for food, rental assistance, and other urgent needs that our clients were experiencing at that point. The pandemic brought enormous disruption and upheaval to people's lives, but there was also a tremendous opportunity to reimagine how we have been doing things. And as we tiptoe towards whatever the new normal looks like, and we don't know what that's going to be, but I think as service providers in this vein, we don't want to forget the glimpses that we got of a better timeline that we saw in the initial response to the pandemic. The flexibility, the empathy, and the trust that made such a huge difference during such a grim time. Thank you.
Thank you, Elise, for painting such a wonderful picture of your program. And as I listen to you, it really does bring it home how much change we've all had to navigate over the last year, and how that change has affected our personal lives, but also the systems that we've been working in as service providers. So thank you very much for kicking us off with this great sharing from your program.
Thank you. I will say writing it was a real eye-opener.
Yeah.
Got back a lot of stuff.
Well, it's as we would in coaching, right? Sometimes writing it down really clarifies things. Yeah, so we're so glad to have had your perspective, and everyone listening, if you have questions for Elise, please include them in the question box at the side of your screen. And for anyone else, we have two more wonderful speakers with us. So I'm going to pass it without further ado to Suzanne Walker, coming to us from Calgary, who is going to bring us her perspectives from the coaching program in her organization in Carya, and the wonderful support they've been able to continue to provide to participants of all ages. So Suzanne, over to you.
Thank you, Glenna. Yeah, so before I start, I'll give you just a brief overview of who Karia is. So we are a nonprofit here in Calgary that's been in existence for over 110 years. Last year we celebrated 110. So apparently relevant
110.
110, yes.
Amazing.
So yeah, offering over 40 multi-generational programs to Calgarians from age 0 to 101 last year, I believe, was the oldest individual that we provided some sort of support to. We offer counseling, anything from counseling, prime time, family support, and all the way up to our great seniors, the Way In program. So our community financial wellness program, which I am delighted to be a part of, offers two specific programmings to our participants. So we offer the one-on-one financial coaching, and then we also offer group financial coaching as well. And each program feeds off the other. So with the individual financial coaching, someone may come in for very unique one-on-one tailored coaching, but then we can move them over into the match savings programs, which allows them to take part in a weekly presentation and then also a savings wherein they will save $50 a month, and at the end of it we will provide them with threefold what they've saved, at which time they're then able to purchase an asset such as car tires, or put the money away for their children's education, or a resiliency fund. Also, along with those group programmings, we also offer RESP workshops, one-on-one a community partner may approach us, and also we do offer group presentations to our staff. For example, we're doing one today on talking to your children on money. So and that then also promotes the community financial wellness program to the rest of our Karia family, of which we do receive a lot of referrals from the other team that we work with. So yes, the last year, goodness. And before we get into that, just to tell you a bit about what one of our participants said I believe this was early in this year, so January, February. But basically our goal is to provide them with the tools and not give them the answers, allow them to be able to make those great decisions and be able to walk away with that toolkit in hand and know where to find additional resources if they need it. It's been, as I was mentioning before, over the last year, we've had to sort of change that a bit. But one of the great pieces is that prior to the pandemic in late 2019, we had already sort of talked about and started the process to move our one-on-one in-person financial coaching to a telephone model. So the backbone was in place. And so when March 13th came and we all had to pack up our offices and move home, we were able to really, I don't want to use the word pivot, but I'm going to quickly. It's the word, right? Yeah. And I have to find a new one. But we were able to really move quickly. So having said that, we did run into a few challenges along the way. And just to highlight some of them was, first off was, the individual's readiness, because there was so much trauma and upheaval and things going on in people's lives, that even though financial coaching was something that they felt they needed, or their social worker or counselor felt that they needed, they maybe had other underlying issues that that prevented them from being able to be present, fully present. We saw a lot of addiction and mental health issues that really were brought more to, I don't want to say more to light, but accentuated by the pandemic. And that then, and when they came to financial coaching and those underlying factors hadn't been addressed, it really had us going back to the drawing board, and then leading into the limited additional services. So then we had to refer them back to the mental health resources that were available in the community, and or were there resources to help them with the addiction, or was it an issue of getting affordable daycare? Well, the daycares were closing left, right, and center. So just that whole piece of that, finding them the resources that they needed, and then with the limited resources, we're all working from home as well. So finding that balance. And then again, and these all sort of roll in together, but the pandemic brought with it, we're all working from home and we're homeschooling, and doing those 5 jobs that we were doing at different parts of the day, we're doing them all at once. So we saw a lot of times when we were on the phone or on Zoom, the kids were coming in and they were trying to do homework assignments, or people were on the bus. Whereas if they were coming in person, we'd have a captive audience. So it was really, that was challenging, and to really get them to that place where they were fully engaged, as well as what their expectations were. We weren't the quick fix that that maybe they thought that we would be. And then for a majority of them, we were their only contact. So that piece of once we'd done the work with them, finding those natural supports that they could then lean on to move forward, in moving forward with their finances, as well as with their social interactions. So how we overcame that? Well, we had to get laptops out to people. We had to teach them Zoom once we learned it. Having those Zoom tutorials, or the one-on-one, where's the mute button, which we've all had. We've met people in the park, or over, sitting in cars in a parking lot. So just being really, coming up with new ideas, and how can we do this and get this done? And then just really celebrating the small successes. If it's saving $5 in a month, that's a great thing. And just being patient with ourselves, and with with ourselves as coaches, as well as letting them know that it's okay to feel the way that you're feeling. So I guess the other piece of that is looking after ourselves, because we all know how important that is. We can't take care others until we take care of ourselves. All in all, we've had tons of great success stories. So I just wanted to share some quickly with you. Accessibility. So moving from telephone to Zoom and back, you know, some people, telephone worked at first, and then when they felt comfortable, oh, let's do Zoom. And so that was really, really a great you know, getting people moving forward in learning the technology. And I had one great story of empowering our participants. One of them, she wrote about how she was teaching her children financial literacy, and she actually was awarded one of the Immigrant Women of the Year awards. So that was pretty spectacular. And
Amazing.
yeah, along
What
with
an
Dr. Teresa Tam. So we were pretty proud of her. Well, we are pretty proud of her.
Absolutely.
So, and then, you know, our own community of practice that sort of we meet on a once a month basis. And we are all the financial, not all of, but the majority of financial coaches in Calgary working for different nonprofit agencies. And we are able to share our successes, share our challenges, and embark on new learnings, and just meet other people who are like-minded and want to have the same impact in the community. So it's been a challenging year. We've learned a ton, and we're excited to move forward into what comes next.
What comes next?
What
Yeah.
comes next?
It's the
Thank you so
question of the
much.
moment. Thank you, Suzanne. This is a really, really wonderful glimpse into your program. I just have this wonderful feeling of being able to chat with you, and can only imagine that it's the same for the participants you work with. And thank you for the great reminder about how financial coaching, it's really only partly about the money conversations, right? There's so much else in terms of, you know, meeting your clients where they're at, and understanding their immediate needs, and the setup they need to be successful. So thank you for all of these wonderful details, and for sharing them with us today.
Thank you.
So third, last but definitely not least, I'm very happy to welcome Millie from SEED Winnipeg, who is going to give us yet another different glimpse into how a one-on-one support program functioned, adapted, and really did so much great work over the last year to year and a half. So Millie, we'd love to invite you to bring us home.
Thank you. And I will use the word pivot. Just thinking about reflecting on the last year and a half, I was thinking about what words I could use to describe the presentation. I was thinking adaptability, resilience, but in the end, pivot won. And not going to lie, it might have been the most recent Friends reunion that inspired this. But pivot was definitely how we responded. And I'd love to share with you what we did at SEED. So at first lockdown, I remember just being shocked about, oh dear, how are we going to remain connected with our community? Hearing from our participants and our community partners, we knew that we had to prioritize being present and available, particularly around tax season, right? Because we're right in the middle of tax season. And so making sure that we were still available for taxes and benefits and identification applications. Around the same time, those emergency response benefits came out. We're like, we've got to really study this and make sure that we're really knowledgeable and able to respond to questions and sort of be ready for that plain language conversation. And then what we recognize too is that when we're navigating through taxes and benefits and those emergency response benefits, is that folks were actually looking for other resources. The start of the pandemic, right? Whether it was toilet paper, or where to get hot lunches or food hampers, A real scare was shelter, so for housing security, and then of course mental health and even basic needs, laundry, and even just someone to talk to. So how did SEED respond? We launched a community financial helpline. Here on the screen, you'll see the graphics that we use and share on social media. We are available Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, voice and text. And a most recent add-on was using Facebook Messenger. We found that folks, find ways, innovative ways to connect with, and social media is one of those advantages where they'll find a way to use Facebook Messenger. So we launched this in July, so it did take about 2 months of really quick turnaround of trying to set up the technology, come up with processes, but the most significant piece of the puzzle here was to partner with the right folks. And so who were the telephone agents behind the scenes? Well, it was ourselves at SEED Winnipeg, where we basically focused on tax filing and identification. We also partnered with Community Financial Counseling Services. They hold the largest tax clinic in the country, and just recognizing how they had to shut that down quite quickly, we wanted to be present and find alternate means of tax filing. Then with Community Unemployed Help Center, they're a new partner of ours, and we're very happy to have them on board as they are our advocacy, our representation. They are the brains. Actually, they're wonderful in terms of how to communicate with provincial benefits, with employment insurance and employment income assistance. And our fourth partner was Immigrant and Refugee Community Organization in Manitoba, where they helped us with the newcomer wraparound supports. Multi-agency telephone information service. So what did the helpline provide? So ultimately we were present and provided quick information, right? So they're like, what's still open? What's available? Where can I get this? So that was sort of the tier 1 questions we would receive. And then next it would be forms, where to find certain benefit applications, how do I do this, and access certain paper that was required to access benefits. And then the next level would be walking them through each application. So we would take the time over the phone, and very much like all of you, the majority of you folks supported your participants through the phone. It could range from 5 to an hour, walking them through both either the forms or the online site on how to navigate and complete an application. Financial coaching, definitely another conversation piece where there's childcare challenges, whether it was a loss of work or income, how now do we pivot or adapt to the new reality? And there were some really heartbreaking stories, but it was nice to know that we had an existing resource list or an accurate, up-to-date list that we can refer our participants to. And ultimately, we were there to be that person that they could turn to. They really appreciated having that sort of, I can call someone and not give all my information. They wanted to remain anonymous. That was the number one. Almost immediately they said, do I need to give more information? But no, we're there to listen. We're here to hear, we want to know what you're going through, and we'll do the best we can to help. And that put a lot of ease in their situation. What did we learn in the first 6 to 7 months of the helpline? Our community members were very much exhausted, to the point where they were either being asked, tell me what to do, where can I go for help? That was literally the approach that we would find on the helpline. And folks were scared. As mentioned earlier, they didn't want to share their name or information. Often they would call and say, I have a friend or I have a family member. But as the conversation went on, more details would come forward, and you knew that it was something they didn't know who to turn to or trust. And so the helpline provided that same space, a safe place to share really, fine details, and so that we could really navigate through those situations. And ultimately, we would give them their options and help prioritize some realistic, manageable steps. We conducted satisfaction surveys for all the calls. We wanted to make sure that, there's a piece about providing advice and guidance, but we wanted to follow up, ensure that our participants were taken care of. You know, was that referral to the housing supports available? Would they need some more advocacy when it came to provincial benefits? So we followed up 1 week after they called the helpline, and it was overwhelmingly positive, where they loved how we were very empathetic and that we were basically available when they needed, with the compassion, being able to walk with them through their situation, no matter how complicated, knowing that they were not alone with the added isolation and social distancing that our communities were facing. And then ultimately a manageable plan and a resource, an answer. They were looking for, please give me direction. And what was wonderful with the follow-up surveys is we often found some of them were not basically taking up our recommendations, but that second phone call, they said, okay, you gave me the extra boost, let's do this. And then they would actually find what they were looking for in the end. Another benefit to the helpline was a true picture, an environmental scan of what everyone was facing. And so the partners on the helpline decided to say, let's do something else above and beyond the helpline and create themed webinars every month. So we'd put our heads together and say, what are we seeing on the helpline? So we would have, for example, how to navigate the CERB and CESB benefits. What are some next steps after you've applied for CERB? How to get back on provincial benefits, understanding the impact of benefits, and ultimately tax filing. What does this look like moving forward? And so that's been really successful. Both community members and service providers have been attending regularly. Where are we now, 1 year later? Is the helpline still up and running? Absolutely, we are still available. In fact, we take calls all over the world, which is quite interesting. We've been able to access.
How far, Millie? Where are the calls coming from?
We have been getting calls as far as Europe, which
oh my,
we're not sure how. Unless we have some Canadian residences there, perhaps, right? So we're wondering if our contacts have been shared that way. But with the time difference, they had to leave a voicemail. But yeah, we've reached and we've had a few calls from Alberta. We've had a few calls from the East Coast, from Nova Scotia. So it's been really nice to have that connection across the country. What's happening now? So the partners still are the response team. Our calls are getting more complicated. So less of sort of those tier 1 questions about information gathering, but now we're finding about 5 or 6 layers in their situation. And we get the sense that this will continue for a long period of time. So we are continuing to find partners and increase our capacity with referrals so that we are sort of that one-stop shop over the phone while we continue to follow provincial health guidelines here in Manitoba. And we're looking at, improving our technology where we can have on-the-spot chat moments with existing partners. So it isn't a referral, like a sort of, we'll refer you to this and then you'll get a call, but rather have instant sort of confirmation and response. And because of the technology, we're looking into even going further beyond sort of response service, but looking at integrating the service into our internal processes. For example, booking appointments or having the ability to do applications on the spot for our access to benefits. So we're really looking to expand the helpline and continue to help Manitobans and anyone from Europe if that's the case. And so some quick stats from the helpline. Since July of the launch of the helpline, we've had over 1,300 contacts, either 1,100 in calls, 180 through text messaging, and 70 on Facebook. And the conversations can last either a minute or even an hour. And we've had well over 650 members and service providers attend our weekly webinars. Thank you so much for letting me share our story.
Thank you, Millie. What an expansive support network you've rallied with this helpline. You're talking a lot about the helpline, but it's clear that you're very well connected to so many other agencies and different types of services, depending on what your participants need in that call moment, right? So yes, thank you so much. I can only imagine the volume of effort it's taken to keep that level of support going for the last 15 months. Well, for the last, I guess, since July, if that's when it started. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, we've had a few questions coming in, so I'm very happy to bring a few of those forward. If you're listening in and have other questions that you're thinking about, please feel free to include them in the question box, and we'll get to as many as we can. So Millie, since we just finished with you, we've had a couple questions come in about your program. Can you tell us a little bit about the ideal background for someone offering this type of service, like in terms of the skills or professional experience that they would want to be able to do that type of service?
I would say, because this was a successful project, because we really sort of tied in what the community was going through, right? So we indicated the tax season. So we wanted to make sure that we had folks available and ready to answer anything regarding tax filing. And then we understood that folks were really scared about provincial benefits, EI, EIA. And so we wanted to bring in the experts for advocacy and representation when it came to navigating those supports. So I would say, if you were looking to launch a helpline, it's finding those key partners that already do the work and would be available to do that. Like ultimately, technology, I mean, I'm not a tech person. I'm not going to. It's easy to do, but as soon as you have tech sort of resolved and have the key partners involved, then it was pretty smooth sailing after that.
That's great. And then another question for you, Millie. Question about, do you foresee this service continuing in terms of navigating taxes or tax debt issues?
Absolutely. In fact, we continue to see those calls happen daily. It's a lot of the calls are folks who are afraid of filing their taxes. There is a sense of, well, if I'm going to have to repay CERB because I was not eligible, a lot of them are sort of, what's really the best thing for me at this point? And so we sort of walk them through each scenario. But questions regarding Canada Child Benefits, also their GST, people are asking about, how does this look like long term for me? A lot of those questions are coming through. They do ask, where can I get these services? But really it's about their individual circumstances and how their benefits will be impacted. That's the number one request right now.
That's great to know. Suzanne, we have a question about the savings programs you mentioned as part of the services that you offer. Would you be able to just speak briefly to the type of items and amounts that people save for through the program?
Sure. So the match savings program, the assets vary from anything that will help them to sustain their livelihood. So could be tires for their car to get to work. Or it could be a down payment for a car. It could be money to put into tools. They've gone through trade school, but they can't buy their tools to get the job. It could be, I'm just thinking of some other things that people have saved for. And the way that they save, it varies. We offered a senior savings circle, so they saved once a month because most seniors get paid once a month. Right now we're offering a Twifties savings circle, and so we're suggesting they can either save $50 a month or $25 every 2 paychecks.
Oh, wow.
And so when you break it actually out to the $25 2 paychecks or 3 paychecks, whatever the month is, it's, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, I can do that. Now, in order to qualify for this, the match savings program, they do have to be low income, but, and we do have where the list of assets, it's basically anything that will help them in their sustaining a livelihood. So it can't just be money it can be for an emergency fund, but it does then have to go into like a tax-free savings account.
Right.
So
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, I was going to suggest, Suzanne, it sounds like there might be a couple folks who are interested in learning more about your match savings program. So, so I'll just encourage everyone, if you download our slides that are in the handouts panel there at the side of the screen, you can find contact information for Suzanne and our other panelists. So we'd really encourage you to touch base afterwards, because I know there's so much detail, but I want to make sure we get to a few more questions. And we have a question that can be for any of the panelists. I think I'll start with Elise, and then if Suzanne or Millie, if you want to jump in too. If your organization could do anything differently if this happened again, is there something that you would choose to do differently, and what would that look like?
Wow, that is a really interesting question, because sort of in the flow of things, like our clients went from long-term planning to planning, you know, week to week.
Right.
I almost feel like that was me as well. Like, all right,
Yes.
boom, tunnel vision.
Yeah.
Off the top of my head, I cannot really think of how we could have responded better in the moment. But I think the idea of, okay, what worked, what didn't work, and taking those lessons for next time is, it's a really good one. I don't have a quick answer for it, but it's definitely something to think
Yeah.
about. Thank you.
Absolutely fair. Suzanne or Millie, would either of you have any thoughts on that question?
I think on our end here, it rolled out pretty quickly when it came to our helpline. But we were really ready our staff were just ready to roll and be prepared to just absorb all the questions that we were receiving. I think initially we had only opened for a few hours, just kind of curious about how to respond. I'm still curious what evenings would look like for the helpline, and weekends sort of touch. We kind of gauged on after hour voicemails and text messages, but thinking, you know, it's always been accessibility, right? Being present when they need it. So that's probably one area that I would have done a little bit differently to see if we could be more available that way.
Yeah, it's hard to be as responsive as we wish we could in the moment.
Right.
Yeah. I see a question here as well, and we're coming to the end, so I won't be able to offer it fulsomely for our speakers, but we have a question about managing secondary trauma, especially as you're supporting clients who are going through trauma themselves, and that is definitely a very relevant question, and I wish we could get into that. I will only offer that as part of this event series, we do have a couple of events focusing on self-care for practitioners. So if that is of any support to that line of knowledge and care for ourselves as practitioners, we encourage you to find those materials and event signups on our event page moving forward. And we hope very much that this session has been valuable for you. I want to thank again Elise and Suzanne and Millie for sharing so much of your valuable time and insights with us. It's definitely been a wonderful hour for me. I know it's the same for those listening in. I hope it has been. Please join us again for more events in this series. Our next one will be on the 17th, which will be an interactive sharing event to chat about how tax time has gone this year. And coming up, we have many more things to share with you. So you can expect to receive an email with all the materials from today's session in case you'd like to review any details you missed or share out with colleagues. Again, we are so happy to have spent this hour with you. We hope that the rest of your day is what you need it to be, and that we'll see you again soon for another learning event. So thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon, and we'll see you next time.